Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to the May edition of Molten Music Monthly. Well, it's May and it feels like autumn, but somewhere out there the summer will soon be upon us. I can feel it in my waters. But in the meantime, I've got a whole load of stuff to bring you this month, starting with the centre. Is it Serum for Eurorack? Erica Synths has envelopes, delays, and ring cross fading. Wave Packets has 4-dimensional modulations. SyncARP is a little box of arpeggiators. Music Thing steals the input from Minimoog. Synescope is an awesome arty, boutique, turny, painty, music makey thingy. Lunacy Audio reinvent music making. Void Modular go all out on AR envelopes. Neutral Labs has more distortion for you. Mosaic flood the 1U market. Herb & Stones are working on a drum machine. Cherry Audio do the MS-20. BeetTweek is kind of the motorised fader you didn't know you needed in Eurorack. Poet's Pilot lets you experiment with nature and motors. The Glow LFO goes fast in darkness and slowly in light. SampleTron version 2, the return of the tapes. ChordJam, you need chords, we've got chords. MatrixBrute is coming in black. Befaco reboots Rebel Tech. And what the heck is a Cicada acoustic synthesizer? Sorry about that. But first, Bitwig 4 is upon us. It's only just popped up in my sort of news feed, so I've only had like 5 seconds to have a look and go, ooh, it doesn't look any different, which is one of those things. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do we always expect a complete revamp, a rework, a reboot every single version, or are we just looking for a couple of key features? Generally, the style of whole version updates these days seems to land in the couple of key features sort of arena, and I guess that's all right. I mean, I've been moaning about that for years now, and I probably just need to accept the fact that every large increment of an update to a DAW is not going to revitalise or revolutionise their entire platform. It's just going to bring a couple of cool features, and I have to remind myself to be happy with that. So, Bitwig 4, what's it all about? Well, it's very interesting, in fact. What they've done is they've expanded greatly upon the MIDI editor, I guess, upon the note creation, the note performance, how you create loops within the sort of loop arranger section and what you do with those notes that are looping around. No longer are we content with stuff to just loop around doing the same thing over and over again. We like probability, randomization. We like this happening or that happening or not happening or could be happening and other things going on with that and perhaps repeating. And that's what Bitwig have gone for in this version. So you have these things called operators. Not a great word because that kind of makes you think FM operators. But never mind, we're going to go with it. And within these operators, you have things like charts. So for every individual note within your MIDI loop, you can now set the probability of that actually happening, which is nice. You can also ratchet it. Put in a number of repeats. And you can scale those repeats so they get louder, get softer, that kind of thing. Pretty cool. They also have something called occurrence, or is it recurrence? Or they have both of those things. I just can't exactly remember which way around they go. But I think recurrence is the repeat thing, is the ratchet thing. So in that case, occurrence is to do with how often it appears in a loop. So if you've got something looping around, is it going to happen every time, or is it going to happen every 4th time, every 8th time? Now we see this sort of thing in hardware sequencers. So it sounds like Bitwig have taken on a little bit of that hardware MIDI sequencing, modular sequencing ideas and put it into their MIDI editor, which is really interesting. I mean, it looks pretty cool, I have to say. I mean, other things have done this, like Persona Studio One have this in their pattern-based sequencer, which brings in all those sort of similar probability and ratcheting and bits and pieces. But Bitwig have chosen to do it within the existing MIDI editor. And that perhaps makes it a more familiar place and a less structured place, even. Sorry about the cockerel. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, so the other thing they've done, right, is they've expanded the expression side. So they're very good at doing individual note MPE type multi-dimensional expression on each individual notes with pitch and such like. You can now do that with velocity, with panning, as well as pitching each note around, and you can throw, I believe, randomization into that as well. So there's a lot of potential for, rather than the same thing happening over and over again in different loops, but lots of development and different things. Oh yeah, that's right. The fill button has some kind of fill button where you press that and it changes things. I don't think it's deliberately just sticking in notes. I think within a loop you kind of have alternative versions almost. So you have notes that appear generally, and then you can specify notes that also appear when you hit the fill button, as if to do something different, to add extra stuff in or take stuff out. Interesting. I think it definitely needs a bit of exploring, I should say. I mean, I did watch the demo about the operators by some lovely guy who threw that together, and it was the classic sort of thing. Let's see how that works. Hits play. It's a shitload of stuff going on, and you're going, what is any of that? What is any of that doing? So, yeah, I think it needs a little bit of time. I will definitely going to sit down with this and give it a bit of a go and try to relate my findings in a bit of a video, because I love Bitwig. I'm a big fan of Bitwig, been using it for years, and I always mean to do a big review of it every time it comes around. I did one, I think, with version 2 or 1, I can't remember. Did one a while ago, but I haven't done one for a bit, so it's worth bringing that back in again, I think, because it's a fun super program. The other thing I think they stuck in was vocal comping, which is, you know, kind of ticking those boxes of other doors, things that have been left behind, as so often happens. Ableton Live did that similarly recently. And so it's good to see those more sort of pro end, more useful audio type tools being blended in there. The Center is a complete wavetable synthesizer for Eurorack. It's inspired by synthesizers like Serum, like June, and has the potential to offer massive wavetable-y, morphing, moving types of sounds. The idea apparently started off just as a wavetable VCO, and then rapidly seemed to start including LFOs and filters and envelopes, and it became this entire voice. In fact, inside somewhere is an entire modular environment built in to the module. And in terms of Serum or June, apparently it can load those sorts of wavetables or those sorts of presets and reinterpret them within the Eurorack situation. It is virtual, it is polyphonic within there somewhere, and each wavetable oscillator can run in unison, and there could be multiple versions of them. So we're kind of talking about a DSP virtual analog synthesizer within a Eurorack module, which can load all sorts of wavetables in different places and become completely epic. Of course, you have to understand that in a Eurorack environment is not necessarily going to be easy to run polyphony to it. But it's got a stack load of knobs surrounding a screen, surrounded also by patch points which you can map to all sorts of different things within inside itself. Evidently it's going to get complex in there. There's going to be a bit of menu diving going on, so it's not perhaps going to be the simple, most instant module, but it's the sort of thing that everybody seems to want, because it hit Kickstarter a little while ago and went boom, and it's all, you know, it aced its way through its goal in absolutely no time at all. So this looks like a very popular a module coming up whenever it gets to be ready. My only question, as ever, within Eurorack is, how do you address these polyphonic things? How do you get enough stuff into it in order to do that? What other gear around that are you going to need in order to fully appreciate 4 notes, 8 notes, 16 notes out of something like that? Wave packets then. Complex oscillations and modulations in 4 dimensions, or at least so they say. The idea this is all about time folding, time looping, which generally seems to mean envelopes and LFOs. But what's interesting perhaps about this particular module is the outcomes. So complicated stuff going on inside, where you have different waveforms, if you like, crashing into each other. But what you get out the other end is you get sort of simple LFOs, you get complex stuff, you get other sort of crazy stuff, and envelopes all coming out at the same time. In some ways, it's like fusing the 4 stages of an envelope with LFOs. So each part of that envelope can be modulated separately and differently with its own LFOs. So you get like a slow wobbly start, and then all crazy, and then I don't really know. But wave packets is looking pretty interesting, just because it's so intriguing as to how do you get those outputs and what to do with them. It's sort of generating complex modulations that you can use within your rack through the manipulation of various envelopes and LFOs, and you can still use the simplicity of those at the same time as creating more complex ones within. And apparently in the background it can also function as a wavetable oscillator, which is that's not like a bonus, that's what some things are entirely. But apparently no, this is just like a background. Oh yeah, but by the way, it's also a wavetable oscillator. Whew. So there you go. I'm sure it will become much clearer over time. Arpeggiation in a box. I mean, a lot of things have got arpeggiators. Many keyboards have them built in. Software has it built in. Arpeggiators are kind of all over the place, and they're one of those things which are, immediately useful. That you tend to, well, I certainly use it all the time in order to test stuff out. I don't want to be playing all the time. I just want to set an arpeggiation going so I can then fiddle with the knobs and change bits and pieces. Do I need that in an external box? Am I lacking arpeggiation generally in my working environment that I'd like that to be in a box? I don't know. I'm still thinking on that. Meanwhile, the makers of the Korgmonger, which is this awesome thing I've lost it. I've put it down somewhere. This awesome chord making machine have come up with this arpeggiation machine called the SyncARP. Comes in a sturdy box, a few knobs, a couple of lights, and MIDI sockets out the back. It's a MIDI device about the size of a decent sized tobacco tin. Oh, those are the days. And it can generate interesting and complex arpeggiations, more so, I would suggest, than your regular keyboard is having, or your regular piece of software has. You've got control over tempo, over swing, over length of notes, octave, direction, and patterns. There's 32 patterns inside with which you to play with, so you send notes up, send notes down, send notes up and down, and that kind of thing. And it's MIDI, so you plug it into anything. You can plug it into your computer, into standalone synthesizers, anything you got knocking around that needs a noise and likes to be arpeggiated. I think perhaps the most interesting thing about it, it seemed to be a very capable arpeggiator. I mean, that's a starting point. And then after that, it's a box which is dedicated to the task. With arpeggiators, you so often find them hidden away in some kind of menu system on your keyboard, where you've got to hold shift something else in order to access a menu which is on a key, which you're trying to play that key, but I need to access the thing to get to it, and then there's another shift to get to the mode to change something else. And so these tend to be buried away and not very intuitively there. Whereas something like this, it's a box, it sits there, you can have it wired into whatever sound source you like. In fact, you could change from one to the other by changing MIDI channels or turning things up, turning things down. You could have it running a whole load of different things together. That's quite interesting now that I think about it. And so in that respect, having something dedicated to that task is quite interesting. It's on Kickstarter now for about $200, which is it's not incredibly expensive, perhaps, but go and check it out, see what you think. Music Thing are awesome. We love Music Thing. They're the people who brought us the Turing Machine, which is one of the greatest modules ever created for Eurorack. They've got another one. Oh yes, they have. This one's called the Minidrive. Now, the idea with this is that if you had a Minimoog, if you owned a Minimoog, one of those few people who do have the original thing, there would be this kind of hack where you take the output and plug it back into the filter input bit on a Minimoog. That way you're kind of feeding back the signal into itself back through the filter and mixing that back in again. No one ever talks about how you actually then get to hear it if you're taking it out. I mean, I guess you've split it. So anyway, the idea is that you take that signal back, plug it back in, and it kind of overloads the filter, and you get this lovely overdriven, gooey, crunchy, nasty Minimoog sound, as opposed to the pure, lovely Minimoog sound that we're often told about. This is the darker side of Minimoog, and that sounds quite groovy. So what Tom at Music Thing has done is he's sort of pulled that circuit out and gone, so what's this made of? Ooh, stuck it together in a little Eurorack module, whacked in a lamp, because on the Minimoog itself there would be a lamp that would say overload to tell you to stop being so nasty, stop pushing it so hard, you need to relax, take it easy, take take a back seat, man, you know, be more chilled, that light seemed to say. So I've taken that light, stuffed it in a Eurorack module as well. I don't think it has anything to do with the sound. I think it's just there kind of for fun. So it glows as it overloads. So what you end up getting is this Minidrive soft, warm, crunchy, saturated sound, which is just going to make anything and everything sound good. It's got one knob, a couple of sockets, lovely lamp. What more could you want? You can build it as a DIY kit, cheap as chips. Fantastic. Go and get one, stick it in your rack, and it'll just make things sound nice. Now this is a lovely thing, the Synescope from Trace Bloom. Is it ever going to become a thing? I don't really know. But we're just going to enjoy the awesomeness of it as it is, even if it's just a one-off. The idea is that you have a turntable. There's a few of these ideas around. Well, I think we're constantly intrigued by the revolutionary nature of the turntable and what it can offer and how it actually does weird things. Wheels are weird once you start putting pickups on them and interpreting them differently from just being a single line of music, which is what we get on a piece of vinyl. Instead, when you start using them in different ways, you've got different speeds going on. This is going faster than this bit, and yet they all arrive at the same time. And what does that mean? You know, how can you use that? Anyway, so the Synescope takes a turntable and puts some kind of sensor arm on it, which picks up light and texture variations, I think. And so the practical upshot of this is if you stick on a disc and draw all over it, it will interpret that as MIDI and control voltage and make squeaky noises and stuff. And that's what we like. So in the video, you've got these beautiful bits of painting going on in this circular motion, which is then changing the tones that are coming out of the synthesizer that's in there. Does it have a synthesizer in it? I can't quite remember. It might just be doing MIDI, CV. Anyway, the point being that with various textures, with various patterns placed onto the turntable, you can create different textures and sounds and sonic environments. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing, I think. And then you can move the arm across so that rather than it sitting on the edge, and it's got, I think, like 4 channels of sound going through. So rather than sitting there, sit it in the middle. And then you've got one thing going forwards and another thing going backwards, if that makes sense. Or you sit it on the other side and everything's going backwards. If there was a forwards in the first place, because I don't really know. You can draw on it as you go. You can wipe stuff off. You can produce already coloured, textured things and stick them on it. And it's all just spinning around and happening. You can drip stuff on it and that changes the way it manipulates the control voltages. Fascinating, very interesting. I wish I could invent and build things like that. That would be a wonderful way to spend one's time. Hyperbole is one of my favourite things, and Lunacy Audio have got it in spades, all about their new, groundbreaking, forever changing the landscape of music technology, and we will be forever in their debt for reinventing a new way of making music through Cube. So what's Cube? It's a sample-based instrument. It's a rompler, I suppose you could say. It's got a bunch of sounds inside, probably really dancey sounds, type big synthy, crazy sounds, that kind of thing. And which we've never. Well, the interesting bit is apparently right. What they do is that they take this sound. No, they don't. Yes, they do. They take the sounds and they stick them in the corners of a cube. So you've got a cube. Got 8 corners. Put a sound in each of them. Stick something in the middle. Let's call it a ball, a glowing sphere of plasma. And we're going to move that ball around within that 3D space so that as it gets closer to one of those sound sources, that sound source sounds more than the other ones. It's like vector synthesis that we've seen before, or kind of a 3D XY pad that we've seen before. Or it's like morphing between oscillators that we've seen before. But this is really new, right? Because it sits in this cube, because it's suspended in this cube, and you can see it visually within the software as a visual representation of this thing. And you can then apply modulations and interesting swirly shapes and bits and pieces to that in order to create the morphing between the things, like we've done in many other things. I mean, I guess because in 3 dimensions rather than your regular XY pad, when we tend to see things in corners of 4. So extending that into 8 sounds is interesting. They've got this sort of orbit engine built in where you can describe a path within this 3D space that your plasma orb thing moves around in, and that can be really interesting. They've got some great shapes in there, and the potential for very changing, morphing sounds is probably awesome. So it's probably great. Not sure you're reinventing anything, but you've made some nice sounds. Well done. The Void Modular HexAR is 6 attack release envelopes. AR, you see, HexAR, the clue's in the name. Fantastic. 6 envelopes in one module. Fantastic. You need all of those. And the great thing about this particular module is that if you don't have things plugged in to trigger those envelopes, they'll just loop all by themselves, which is great. And at the bottom you've got some mix outs as well, I think, or at least you can combine a few of them into either an interesting LFO or a more interesting envelope, whatever you like. So crash these things together, mix them together, get complex waveforms out the other side. Interesting. I mean, envelopes are useful, and I'm finding that AR envelopes in particular are useful everywhere, rather than all this mucking about with ADSR that just seems to be a waste of time unless you're doing something really long and fruity. Otherwise, quick stuff, farty bass lines, filters, that kind of thing. AR is plenty. That looks like my sort of module, I reckon, possibly. Anyway, it's got some nice lights on it and stuff, and should be available anytime now. Synths are always throwing out new modules. They've got 3 new ones this month, I think. First one is the Bucket Brigade BBD. It's an old style analog delay, but of which there's two delay lines within the same module. The 2 lines work together to create this sort of multi-tap environment. You can crossfade between the 2 with the big knob in the center. They've stuck in some noise cancellation to get rid of the usual kind of, with BBD delay effects, they tend to gather noise upon themselves, particularly when you start chaining them together. And so Synths have built in some noise suppression to try to keep the signal as clean as possible without removing that sort of classic character. They've also put in a bit of a filter for colorization, and also an internal LFO to really mess about with the timing. The feedback knob can take itself all the way into some crazy oscillations, and can end up, if you're using the timing knob, to sort of become a bit of a drone that you can tune in to whatever you like. So as usual, Synths are kind of pumping and squeezing every single creative opportunity out of a module. The same could be said for the Ring Crossfade or RingX Fade, which follows a similar idea of using 2 things, so 2 ring modulators and a crossfade in order to go from one to the other. And once again, of course, they've made it more interesting than I can fully understand at this point. It will let signal through if you don't have a carrier, or let the signal through as opposed to needing both carrier and signal to do the ring modulation thing. It will just bypass all that together, and you can stick an LFO into the carrier and then it will start to wavefold in an interesting way. They've also stuck a VCA in there, and as they say, you've got some kind of amplitude modulation powerhouse stuck in a little module. Carrying on with this Joule theme is the Black Joule ASR envelope generator. I've done a lovely long video on this where I compared it to things like the Make Noise Maths, which of course it isn't quite. However, the ability to loop an envelope and to control it with control voltage on the attack and decay side make it very much like the way I would use maths in some kind of generative patch, where you're expanding an LFO which is looping, you're getting an end of cycle output that you're using to trigger and gate something else, which is then modulating and then changing the length and squeezing it backwards and forwards. Basically, it's an envelope, a pair of envelopes, right, with a lot of possibilities, because you can modulate the attack and the decay stage, and they loop and they send out end of cycle glitches and pulses, which is lovely. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, a lot of capability and versatility within it. So there you are, 3 new modules from Synths. They're always good fun, always got a lot of stuff going for them, and are definitely worth their place in your rack. Nermal from Neutral Labs. It's another box of noise, distortion and general glitch craziness, which is great. I built their box over there, the Elmira. over there. Can you see that in the darkness in the background, which is a bit like a Lyra 8, sort of a drone noise glitch machine? Well, Neutral Labs have taken the noisy distortion bit and stuck it in a rather nice looking Eurorack module. It's called Nermal, and it has this sort of bite thing on it, so it's biting into things, it's gnawing at stuff, it's destructing in probably sort of a digital, in an edgy, nasty way, as opposed to a soft, saturated way. But it has different degrees of destruction and distortion, different levels and possibilities, like unpeeling a destructive, distorted, evil little onion. That's the sort of thing. I have one. They've sent me one to build as a kit, and I will definitely be giving that a go very, very soon. So I'll be able to tell you all about it in the finest, down to the component level detail. Mosaic came from nowhere. They had nothing going on, and then wallop, 18 modules, just like that. Quite extraordinary. So Mosaic's vibe is all about 1U. 1U. This bit here, this gap here. Can you see that? I don't know that you can. Anyway, this gap, I've got 1U gap in this particular case for what they call tiles, Eurorack tiles. 1U, little ones like this, that tend to have smaller functions, little bits and pieces, utilities often, and other things that go around the main force of your Eurorack. Mosaic seem to have a different idea of that. They go, no way, look, there's a whole load of stuff here, jam it in there. In fact, what you want is just really long and thin Euroracks that go like sort of 5 meters wide, and then that would be awesome. or something, they seem to say. But more commonly, you're going to get a 1U, a row of regular Eurorack. But the sort of things that they have in their list are, you've got just feeling a bit old for this. You've got envelopes, you've got an analog VCO, for heaven's sake, a kick drum, a multiplier, well, of course, clocks, a dual linear VCA, a 4-channel mixer. You've got a hi-hat. In fact, there's a whole drum machine in here somewhere, kicks, snares, hi-hats, all sorts of bits and pieces. You've got line inputs and outputs, a low-pass filter, reverbs, effects, quantizers, and even a little tile, right? There's just an LED. It's a tile with a socket LED. Genius. Total genius. Anyway, these are looking pretty fantastic. It's quite a great selection. I don't have any 1U yet. I'm kind of poised, thinking about it, stroking my chin gun. I don't really have the time for 1U. I will do, and I do plan to. So maybe a couple of Mosaic bits might be in the offing. We shall see. Herbs and Stones are some groovy people, really sort of laid back, chilled. Herbs and Stones. Just didn't really... Anyway, they seem really lovely. Bunch of people making a kind of really groovy, cool groove box. Some kind of acid synth with sort of rhythms and loops and bits and pieces all plugged into it. Nice desktop unit, great. They're now bringing out something to accompany it, which is a bit more focused purely on drums and percussion. They're calling it the Gentle Wham, which is really nice, and it's going to go alongside their Liquid Foam, which is their sort of baseline groove box thingy. And it appears to be a 6-voice analog drum module. Details are scarce at the moment, but it's a similar size box with some buttons to trigger stuff, as well as patch points in order to get it involved in a larger thing. You've got a couple of knobs for things like pitch and drive and twang and whatever it is, sizzle, I suspect, on cymbals and things like that. And it will undoubtedly be delightful, very, very cool, and a nice thing to have. Cherry Audio are still on a flying thing at the moment. They are off. And the latest one is they've taken on the Korg MS-20. Funnily enough, just when Korg themselves have reintroduced the MS-20 in a number of colours, full size, proper thing, all the stuff. Korg have just done that, and Cherry Audio have gone, right, well, we're just going to do a virtual version for 25 quid. There you go. See, you don't need the real thing, just have this, the PS-20. PS, I think, the P standing for polyphony, because the interesting thing with the Cherry Audio take on the MS-20 is that they've pushed it into 16 voices of polyphony. So no one's played 16 MS-20s together before, at least I don't think so. And so this is giving Cherry Audio the opportunity to push forward a whole new sound, using the sound, the gnarliness potentially of the MS-20 16 times over in chords, in pads, in great big washes of textured sound. Very interesting. Can we cope with that? I don't know. I mean, the thing about the MS-20, and I have played with a real one, I remember, in a pub somewhere in Norwich, pretty sure somebody brought one in, and yeah, it was as gnarly as anything. That filter, man, cool, good grief, that would cut through anything, cut through bloody steel, that will. Heck. So yeah, and funny enough, I haven't had a go of the Cherry Audio one yet. I literally have not had the time, and I've picked up all their other synths so far, so the likelihood is I will probably pick up this one. But generally speaking, I found the Cherry Audio stuff to be excellent. I mean, it's cheap, and people have been suggesting that it doesn't quite have the quality of the G4 stuff or the soft tube emulations or other bits and pieces. I don't know. I mean, they sound pretty good. Sound pretty good to me, but they what do I know? I don't know anything. I'm very easily pleased, ultimately. But it looks great. They've revealed a load more patch points. They've added a sequencer and some effects. All the usual things you do in a nice piece of software, and is probably really, really good. It's only 25 quid. Go and check it out. This is a weird one. This one is slightly magical. It's a motorized knob for Eurorack. But it's not that. And to see it as that is to really do it an injustice, because what this is a programmable haptic feedback controller automated device within Eurorack, which will connect you to the possibilities of what you're doing more so than anything ever has before ever. What are we talking about? Oh, I don't know. It's a really glowy knob, right? And what's great about it is that it is motorized. So at a very basic level, you can go, a bit of modulation like this, and then it will continue to do that. And you'll see it move. Fantastic. In fact, in the video, they draw a line on it, so you can, which seems somehow weird and simplistic and juvenile compared to the glorious professionalness of the piece of kit. Like this wonderful, beautiful thing, all these lights, and drawing it with a marker pen. That doesn't seem right somehow, but it does get across the idea that this knob is turning. However, it's much more than that. What it does is that it has the ability and technology inside it to kind of have a gravitational pull. So as you're turning it, it can work against you. So you can feel the resistance. That way you can feel when you're reaching some kind of point or back, or you turn it up and you release and it goes back down again. It's like pulling something and then allowing it to go back. It has sort of momentum. It has technology within it to let it bump as you turn it around, to indicate something. You could have your hand on it and it's starting to give you information about what's happening and what's turning and what's moving. You can map in and record all sorts of movements and possibilities within it. It's much more like having a gamepad controller in your hand that's giving you rumble feedback on things that are happening within your environment. Very interesting. But also, it's a motorized knob, which is fascinating. And the lights on it are amazing. It just looks like a fantastic module, regardless of what it is you're going to use it for. But exactly what we're going to use it for, that is another question. Interesting. I think it will give you an opportunity to think about things slightly differently. But, you know, exactly how you'll use that, I don't know. Would it end up just being another one of these things like the wavy thing and the ringy thing that it's like, this is great, then I just don't quite know what to do with it. And then you put it down and never use it again. I don't know. It's called BeetTweek, and it looks completely magical. Poet Pilot, they give the impression that they had a really, really good idea. They're thinking, oh, this is an awesome idea. Let's get this out there. The idea is you've got a box, you attach a load of motors to it and make it CV controlled. So you control these motors, or do the motors control you? One or the other. Anyway, a box with some pressure plates, copper pads on it. You stick your fingers on and that goes whiz, and this goes whiz. And through that you can generate all sorts of environmental sounds. You can twang things over here, twang a guitar, crash into some bricks over here, knock something over, whir this thing here, turn on a blender. all of that, and use those sounds within the magic of your music making. And it's great. I mean, it's lovely. It's a great way of engaging with your immediate environment while trying to make a bit of music. It's lovely. It's the sort of thing that's lovely. It's also MIDI, so you can sequence it as well. So once you've started getting sounds and craziness going on, you can actually write music with it. The only thing is that the Como Electronic Field Kit kind of does this already. That's a similar box with similar motors that you plug into it, although it does slightly different things, and perhaps the DC motor side of it is not perhaps as big as the 8 channels you get on the Poet Pilot, but it's there anyway, and I think there are expanders to give it that kind of functionality. And it's the sort of thing that a lot of people have used. You see it about the place, people stepping out into the world doing really cool, nice videos on it, and I think the Poet Pilot is trying to capture that idea. The only thing is that it's like 3 or 4 times the price. So you're asking for like 750 odd dollars or euros, whereas the field kit's about 250. And the field kit has a lot of alternative stuff in it. I don't know, it seems really expensive for what they're doing and what they're trying to capture. But, you know, price is always relative depending on who you are and what you think about. So there you are, the Poet Pilot, control the world with solenoids and motors and go and make some bangy, crashy, wobbly, vibrating music. The Glow LFO. This is something crazy out of Air Instruments, our favourite place of noise and destruction, glitch and craziness. And the Glow LFO it's an LFO. It's got 3 waveforms, square wave, sine wave, and a bit of a random thing. But the thing it has going for it is this light sensor in the middle. It's got this light dependent resistor, which has an effect, if you wish, on the LFOs within. I think as it gets darker, it speeds up. As it gets lighter, it slows down. It's done a lot of demos with kind of taking the light out of the regular LFO output, sticking on one of those little LEDs that flashes with voltage, and stick that near the light sensor, so you get that speeding up and slowing down, which then sort of feeds back on itself into the speeding up and slowing down of it to create craziness, which is what Air Instruments is all about. If it's not creating craziness, they're not interested. So chaos, LFOs, lights, glowing, all that kind of thing, plane going over. We love it. We love that kind of stuff. So the Glow LFO, if you want some interesting, crazy modulations within your Eurorack with a light. I don't know that the light's included. Hang on. I don't know. There seems to be a little picture of a light glowy thing. So maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But, you know, we have light. We can work that out. It's the Glow LFO. SampleTron 2. The return of the tapes from IK Multimedia. One SampleTron was not enough. No, they've dug out a load more tapes now from some wheezy old broken machines from somewhere, and they've come up with 8 gigabytes of the stuff. 8 gigs of these crackly old tapes of little loops of dancey music, of dance bands from the 50s, and flutes. Flutes, we always remember the flutes, don't we? Yes, we do. Does the Mellotron really deserve 8 gigabytes worth of sampling? I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's a bit like the vocoder sound for me, in that you know the sound when you hear it, and it's kind of been, you kind of feel like it's been done. It can only really do one thing. A vocoder can only really be disco. Mellotron can only really be sort of psychedelic 60s music. It always is. There's always better sounding organs and strings. If you want the Mellotron sound of a string, it's always going to me, throw it in a particular vibe that I feel has already been perhaps done to death. But again, what do I know? I don't know anything. People love vocoders. People love those string machines. You know, those old string machines, the Roland one, and you know, Behringer are doing one. That kind of thing. That goes along with the vocoder often, doesn't it? Yeah, that's right. See how much I know? People love these things. I can't work it out. I just sort of scratch my head going, really? We always thought these sounded crap, and we were really grateful when, you know, proper strings and sampling came along. Or big analog synths, which is a different thing. But no, people still love it. And here we are, SampleTron 2, masses and masses of tapes stuffed in. You can layer up 3 at a time, and the new thing is you can stick your own sound in. That is a bit more interesting. So sample something yourself, or your own instruments, or your own voice, whatever you like, stuff that in, and you can run it through all of the tape emulation modeling software that's within the interface. Interesting. Yeah, so that gives it a whole new lease of life. So it's worth it just for that. Is it worth it for the 8 gigs worth of library? Possibly. I don't know. Spend an afternoon losing yourself in the 60s with that. Could be great. I know. I'm so biased and opinionated. But that's what you're here for, right? In the meantime, though, SampleTron 2 is, of course, by IK Multimedia, and they have turned 25. They've been in this business 25 years. Funnily enough, so have I. Amplitude, I seem to remember, is one of the first pieces of software I used to sell back in Turnkey when I started work there as a shop floor salesman. That and then T-Racks. They were some of the early bits of software, pre-VST, I think, in fact. So yeah, I've been with them the whole time through things like Marislav and the Little Bits and Sample Tank, Syntronic, all these things over the years that they've released. I've been sort of struggling along with them, and I've enjoyed what they do. They do some kind of crappy little plastic things at times, but also very useful crappy little plastic things. But they also do big, huge things like the Marislav library. It's just extraordinary. It's an amazing sampled instrument. And Amplitude, of course, gets bigger and stronger and more authentic all of the time. So they do awesome stuff as well as little crappy stuff, but all of it sort of gels together into a really interesting company that has its finger in different pies. I mean, these synths that they've brought out, the Uno synths, were pretty groovy, trying to wrestle a little bit with the interface, but sound quality wise, fantastic. The new ones, very interesting. I haven't had a go yet, but they look interesting, innovative, different. They're going to stand out on your stand, and as far as I can work out, the sound quality of them is again excellent. So they're doing some great work, and they're still at it, and they're still doing it, and I wish them every success in the future. Audio Modern have a new plugin out. It's called ChordJam. Now, these people make one of my favourite plugins, which is called Riffer, which is this. It's just a great melody generating piece of software where you roll dice, it creates a pattern, and you stick that into something, and then you can play with the knobs, which is what I like to do. That's mostly what I do in my life. This one is focused on chords and chord progressions and generating a whole bunch of chords in a relevant, interesting and musical way. The idea is that it generates sequences and chord progressions for your tracks. You can add in, or set a bunch of parameters, set a bunch of levels of randomization and probability, and then it will generate these structures around what you're already doing. Now, I haven't looked into this properly at any depth at all, but it seems like it could be a really interesting idea, because we often find ourselves using the same chords time and time again. And so with something like this, the generative nature of it could perhaps take you down different avenues, different places, get you thinking and moving in a slightly different way as you find those other tones coming in that perhaps you weren't expecting. So yeah, interesting, worth checking out, I think. New in from Arturia, although not officially announced as yet, at least at the time of filming, is the MatrixBrute in black. They are calling it the MatrixBrute Noir. Noir, darkness. The idea is a bit of a paint job, right? Black front panel, orange knob, blue knob, job's done. Job's a good one. Yeah. That's about it. Limited edition. Apparently there'll be 500 of them. Does this mean that the MatrixBrute is on its way out and this is the last hurrah of that particular synth? I don't know. It's a huge thing though. Huge synthesizer. Very well regarded, I think. It's sort of monophonic, 3 oscillators, which can play in a kind of a paraphonic sort of way. But essentially it's all about that matrix, which I've always felt looks a little strange to me. It's not a beautiful thing, I don't think. But in black, perhaps reinvigorated. Maybe. Anyway, details hopefully should be coming from Arturia very soon. Now, modular makers Befaco have taken on Rebel technology. A Rebel technology were the people behind the OWL platform. It was both a pedal and a Eurorack module, which had this sort of owl face on it, I suppose, which inside had a DSP engine, which could run all sorts of patches and modular ideas that you would do in a web-based application and then send to the module / pedal and then operate it with hardware. So it's a DSP based thing, a bit like a Disting, a bit like a Ornament and Crime, those sorts of ideas. But Rebel technologies seem to run out of steam over the last couple of years, and Befaco have kind of taken it on, have taken it under their wing, not to make it theirs, but to take on production, to tweak it a little bit, maybe update it, to keep it going, because there's some great ideas in there, and Befaco want to keep it alive. What is going on out there? So anyway, what has just turned up? Keep the noise down. What has just turned up is a bunch of kits. I got them over here, in fact. I mean, they started off with the Lich, which is like a new version of the Owl platform in itself. But then they've also got these kits of, see that one, and that. That's really helpful me showing you the kits, because they don't actually. Anyway, so there's I think 4 other Rebel Tech modules that they have generated kits for that I'm going to be building soon, and they're very much seem to be based around triggers. So there's a Euclidean one, a dual one, a single channel one, some triggers, and a clock multiplier or divider. Can't exactly remember which, but all of them undoubtedly useful. Befaco have tweaked the front panels so they look fantastic. They did. I mean, Rebel Technologies ones did look a little bit kind of, whereas the Befaco one's a bit more. Ooh. So black, interesting, nice. So I've got those to look forward to, and I'm going to be building a Lich and all those modules very, very soon. It's the next thing on my bench, right? So hopefully I'll be able to do some Hopefully I'll be able to do some stuff on it soon if I'm not eaten by chickens. The Cicada acoustic synthesizer is a tactile pathway to musical imaginings. Thank you. What does that mean? I don't know. What they are really good at is releasing beautifully shot, weird, interesting videos where you have no clue what the device is doing to the soundscape that you can hear. It's like, so you've got these wings on a knob, something to do with texture, something to do with touch. The way that is sort of a pickup, that it's like a contact mic somehow being scraped across something which is generating control voltages perhaps, or sounds, or is it taking stuff in, affecting it and sending it back out again? Really difficult to know. There's a honeycomb element where you've got these things that are connected together. One's doing one thing, one's doing something. Oh, there's 3 of them now, and they are interconnected, and they are moving about, and all the time you've got this sound going on that you don't know, is that anything to do with this, or is that just something else? I don't know. I mean, I've seen people who I know and respect playing with these things, going, "Oh wow, this is awesome," and I'm going, "But what is awesome? What? We don't know what it is. It's not. Can someone just go, this bit does this, right? Twang, twang, twang. This bit does this." Because I'm looking at these videos, going, "Wow." So what's happening? The only thing I've gathered is that when somebody moved something, it went. Is that it? Because these things are flipping expensive. I mean, when it came out, it was, let me just check, it started at about $2,500, going up to about $3,500, which is like, for what? What is it that we're paying for? We don't understand. Will somebody please explain it to me? But then during the introduction of this synthesizer, acoustic synthesizer, they suddenly had a change of heart and dropped the price by like $1,000, which is no bad thing, because it was like, they weren't explaining it. We had no idea what it was doing, and it was $3,000. It needs to be flipping revolutionary to be that sort of money. Not like, oh, it's a useful thing, kind of fun, I get it out of the weekends, that kind of thing. That's not good enough. No, we need the details. We need to know exactly what is going on. Hopefully, more information will appear on this mysterious acoustic synthesizer. I just want to know what each bit does. Just somebody sit down with it, rather than making a huge performance where you've got no clue what it is that is doing to the soundscape that you can hear. We need to remove all of that and get down to basics. This is the thing, twang, twang, twang. I'm going to put a sine wave through it and make it do something different. That's what we need. It looks weird and interesting. I like the vibe. I like what they're talking about with the marrying of insects to this, and the textures and touch, and what that means and how that can work and how that can change. All of those things are fascinating. It's just that I have nothing to grab hold of to understand the context in which any of this is happening. So we look forward to more from that. It doesn't sound like they're going to send me one, does it? Because it's a bit of an expensive item, and I seem to be a little bit funny about it. So, well, anyway, we shall see. So that's it. That'll do. Sorry about all the moving about. I seem to have decided that my chair is really interesting today. I don't know. It's just one of those funny days. Or was it because I went on a bike ride this morning? Yeah, that was probably it. I did myself in for like the rest of the day. I don't know. Must be nuts. I'm doing this cycle ride for the month of May in order to raise money for prostate cancer. It's a good cause. It's a fantastic thing. I just forgot that I don't actually ride my bike very often, and so I'm rubbish at it. And 100 miles in May is just nuts. But I'm on, where am I now? 75 miles I've just done. I've got a couple of days to go. Got to sort it out. Got to get it in there this weekend, or it's all over. Anyway, if you'd like to sponsor me or donate to research into prostate cancer, that would be awesome. There's bound to be a link. I'll stick a link in and you can do that. That would be great. Anyway, so coming up this weekend, this Sunday, let's have a bit of a live stream, shall we? What date are we on? 30th, is that right? Yeah, so 30th of May, bank holiday weekend again for us. But who cares? Sunday nights, bank holiday weekend, what could you possibly be doing? Maybe you're watching a Disney movie, with your kids, whatever. I don't care. Drag yourself out, come over to YouTube and we'll chat. So, and I have some specific things to talk about. Bitwig 4, I'd like to talk about DC coupling. Just released a video on DC coupling with the Ferrofish Pulse 16 CV version, and I thought that was fascinating and interesting, but I don't know that I made everything as clear as perhaps I could have done. And so let's talk about it. Let's discuss exactly what it is that comes out of these devices. Let's discuss why the pros and cons of expert sleepers as opposed to something else which is DC coupled. Let's talk about floating ring cables and all that kind of thing. Let's talk about that. I think that could be really interesting. I'm sure I had some other things to talk about, but I can't remember what they are now. And as time would have it, I've got to go and pick up the kids from school. So it's probably best just to leave it here. So this Sunday, 8 o'clock, British summertime, British summertime, 8 o'clock, Sunday night. Let's get together. We'll chat. We'll make a piece of music. Maybe talk about stuff. I'll run on about things. We'll talk about DC coupling. Maybe I'll demonstrate a couple of things. Don't know. Who knows? Anything could happen. Bring a beer and that will be nice. I did masses of videos this month, 9 or 10, I think, which is quite extraordinary. So, busy, churning them out, getting through stuff, and I got a lot more to come and some brilliant ideas. God, have I got good ideas. It's going to be an extraordinary June, I think. Yeah, great. So if you like this sort of thing and you haven't perhaps sponsored me for the cycle ride, why don't you come and join me on Patreon? Because on Patreon is just a little place where you can throw me a couple of quid and help support the making of these videos. Because I do this as a hobby. I don't get paid for this. I get a few pennies in advertising and stuff from Patreon. That's about it. But, I need all the support I can get, really, because it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And, no, I really do need to go and get my kids to do this sort of thing. And all that support is extremely appreciated, and you get the opportunity to have a potentially closer communication with me if that's something that people would ever want. I don't know. So yeah, lots more to come. Join us on Patreon, sponsor me for prostates or something, and in the meantime, see you Sunday. Go make some tunes.